Life is often not how we planned. Things change. Unexpected things happen. Sometimes we think they're wonderful, the things that happen that are unexpected. Sometimes we're not so pleased with the things that happen. But the truth is things happen. Sometimes we wonder, tragic things happen, and we wonder, why? Why is this happening to my loved one? They're such a good person. What could have possibly made this happen? And we don't understand. We wonder why bad things happen to good people. And when I know someone or myself am in that struggle of what's going on, it makes me think of Jacob in the Bible. And maybe you're familiar with the story. It's in Genesis. And Jacob and his family and his entourage are traveling across the desert on their way to somewhere, and he sends everyone ahead, and he's by himself. And this is what it says. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint. As he wrestled with him, then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob says, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans, and you have prevailed." So there's some pretty nice things that happen in that Bible passage. There's a struggle. We've all been there. We've had our moments, our days, our weeks, our months, our years of struggle. And in that struggle, we've probably had moments where we're just like, just let it go away. And sometimes it actually does go away. But Jacob, he says, "No, I will not let you go until you bless me." I don't know how many of us would say that, but I think there's really good wisdom in that, because he said, hey, this is happening, something's happening here, and I want to get the best out of it. And another thing happens is that he gets a new name. It's almost like a new identity. He's realized something important. He's a new person because of this experience. And haven't we all been there too? Now, like I said, we all want to avoid those trials. And sometimes things happen that we can't call good. Some people say, well, it's all good. And I say, I don't think so. There are some things that I can't call good. But, like Jacob, I can say, I will not let you go until you bless me. There's two women, Candy and Cindy. They have something in common, which I'm sure neither one of them would like to have in common. Both of their daughters were in car accidents that were caused by drunk drivers. One of their daughters died. The other one was paralyzed. And in their struggle to deal with this, they said no. No one else is going to experience this. They didn't want this to happen. And so together they created Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I remember as a child, we had a little red bow tied on our car antenna, which meant that we were on board with this idea of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And you saw them all over the place. And it was a big deal. They changed the culture around drunk driving in our country. They changed legislation around drunk driving in our country, along with many other passionate folks. And that is what finding the blessing in the struggle is about. Now, I would say that a lot of nonprofits that we know about are created from the same kind of thing. Something happens, a diagnosis that we didn't want to hear, awareness of something that's going on, an injustice that we don't want to know about. But once we do, we can't let it go. We say, there's got to be lemonade somewhere in all of these lemons. And a really great story about that is about Alex Scott. Just a girl, she had cancer. At 4 years old, she'd probably been in the hospital more than she'd not been. And she said to her family, when I get out after this treatment, I want to make a lemonade stand and raise money for the doctor so they can help other kids. And so that's what she did. She and her brother had a lemonade stand. In their first efforts, they collected $2,000. Now, I don't know about where you live, but where I live at a certain time of year, you will find volunteers in front of every grocery store having an Alex lemonade stand. When Alex was 8, she passed away. But at that time, she'd already raised over $1 million. That was 10 years ago, and it continues to this day. She found that lemonade literally in the lemons, right? She said, this is important to me. I want it to be different. She found that place of love in her, that passion, that heartbreak. She made something different happen. Now, some of you might be watching this and saying, you know what, I'm in the middle of tragedy right now. Don't tell me about how there's a blessing in that. I get it. I know what it's like to be in that place. And even if I haven't experienced your trauma, I've experienced my own. I get it. That's okay. Grief takes as long as it takes. And that is the way it should be. Breathe. All I'm going to say is breathe, and I love you. And for those of you who have people around you who are maybe in that situation, compassion, love. Give them all the love you can. Don't expect it to take any longer or less than it takes. Laugh together, cry together. You know, that's all it takes. When you get connected back to that love space, you can change the world. And that's what we're talking about. Because things happen. Not bad things, not good things. You may consider them amazing. You may consider them heartbreaking. Things that are unpleasant, things that are blissful. They're just things. But when those heartbreaking things happen, those can be the things that fuel the fire to change our experience. For when we say no, like Cindy and Candy did, when we say no, we don't want anyone else to feel this way. When we center in that love in us, that passion in us, and say, it's got to be different. We fuel the fire and create something new. We hold on until we get that blessing. It's got to be there. Andrew Harvey, a well-known speaker and revolutionary, says, find the thing that breaks your heart. And when you are fueled by that thing that breaks your heart, that passion, find some other people like you that have that same passion. And then go do something about it. That's something we can all do, whether we've had a tragedy happen to us or not. What is it that breaks your heart? Do something. And for some people, that means just responding in love. That's a good first step for all of us, right? To respond in love. Just a little story. A friend of mine, this happened outside her car window. She saw a young driver bump the car in front of her. Just tap. And as I probably would have reacted as a young driver, this young driver was very upset. She gets out of the car. Ah! The more mature woman in the car in front of her gets out. Now this is a choice point for her, right? We've all been there. We have those choice points. And she comes back. And what does she do? She hugs the younger driver. She gives her a hug. And since my friend was in the car and they were in traffic, she doesn't know what happened next. But I'm guessing it's a lot different than what that young driver thought was probably going to happen. And that's a choice point. That's a making our world better. That's responding in love. It's good stuff. Viktor Frankl, who you've probably heard of, he was in a Nazi concentration camp and then went on to write books and learn all sorts of things and change our world. He said, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And so, my friends, that's what I invite you into. In any given circumstance, that we can choose our own way. And sometimes that way is to be in grief. That's great. That's where you need to be. And sometimes we get to be like the woman in the car and say, hey, I'm going to choose love today. And maybe we're going to be like Alex and say, you know what? I want other kids to have it better, so I'm going to do something about it. And all the people who have volunteered for these organizations that have made a difference in our world, I want something to be different. I'm going to choose that. So, when you're in the struggle, and we're all in some sort of struggle at some point, when we're in the struggle, remember Jacob. Remember that we can hold on. And when it's time for that struggle to be over, say, there is a blessing in here and I'm getting it. I'm finding the blessing. And then do what's yours to do. You know in your heart what's yours to do. Find that thing that breaks your heart. Find that thing that sizzles with passion for you and do it. And that's how we change our world. That's how we make our world a better place.
I'm Nick Muncie-Jarvis, and I'm the next generation of Unity Coordinator for Unity's Northwest region. It's such a joy for me to be in this position to create a space for young adults, either those that have come through Unity churches or those that are coming into Unity, to have a safe space to explore their spirituality, to grow, to develop, to have community, to share love and support. Another great part of this position for me is I get to work with the middle school and high school age youth groups at their regional retreats. And it's so much fun for me because this is where I started in Unity. Like, I came in when I was 10, and by the time I was about 13, I was really coming from my own spiritual growth rather than tagging along with my parents. I created friendships and memories that last till now, 20 years later. And I work with my best friend who was at Unity Connection in middle school and high school. I got to perform a friend's wedding that we met in Uniteens, and she told me 10 years ago, I want you to perform my wedding. And then 2 years ago, I had the immense honor of getting to do that. And so I serve in that capacity to create a safe, loving environment so that people can grow into their sense of self, to develop that confidence that knows that I've got a 200-person community backing me. They love me. I can't go wrong. Even if I screw up the biggest that I can possibly think of, they still love me. And that is so supportive and loving for me that I gotta show up and create that for others so that when they're showing up not on their best, I can be there to love them. And in turn, when I'm not at my best, they'll be there loving me. And so Unity is a great space for a loving, safe, supportive environment that's accepting. It's like, it doesn't matter who you were yesterday, you're here today. And we're glad you're here.